Thank you very much for holding the hearing. Secretary Wolf, as you and I talked about in our conversation recently, I appreciate your service. This is a tough time for our country in many respects. COVID-19, the demonstrations and rioting that we've seen, you're in the middle of it. And our condolences from this entire committee go to the family and to the colleagues of Dave Underwood, a Federal Protective Service officer who was killed outside the Oakland courthouse in California. But also, you've lost a couple of officers recently to COVID-19, contracted on duty, Marco Gonzalez and Lucas Saucedo. And we think of them too. And then recently, another officer injured along the border. So these men and women are doing the work for all of us to make our country safer and more secure. Your people are also responding to the wildfires in California and throughout the West, and then also obviously the recent hurricanes. So you're in the middle of a lot, and I think it's really important that we have confirmed leadership at the department right now. For some time, I have been concerned about the lack of leadership positions being filled, not just at the top, but through the ranks. And I know the chairman shares that concern, as does the ranking member. We've been working on it. But we need a confirmed secretary. Some have said to me, well, we're at the end of the first term of the president. Why are we focused on this? We're focused on it because we believe that the men and women of the department deserve to have that kind of certainty and accountable leadership. So I'm delighted we're having the hearing today. I want to get you confirmed as quickly as possible. And I also think it helps to head off some of these court battles that were talked about earlier, which are obviously a huge distraction, for the agency at a critical time. So in our conversation, we talked about the whistleblower complaints. You've addressed those again today. I appreciate the fact that you're taking those complaints seriously and that you are asking the IG to complete the investigation independently and thoroughly. I think that's appropriate, and I don't want to belabor that issue because, again, it seems like not only in private have you talked to me about this, but in public testimony this morning, you've made a personal commitment to that. You've also made a commitment to being sure our elections are safe, and that's really important. We've already started voting in some states. We start soon in Ohio. We need to be sure there's a unified and streamlined federal effort to help our states and our local efforts to secure our elections. Let me give you a second to expand a little on that. You mentioned it in your testimony, but can you talk about specifically what DHS has done in this regard?
Absolutely. So again, at DHS, when we talk about election security, we are focused on cyber threats to election systems and election infrastructure. So over the past 3.5 to 4 years, we have been working with all 50 secretaries of states, thousands of local jurisdictions, technology vendors, and the like, making sure that our election here in November is going to be the securest election we've had to date. Obviously, we saw the concerns in 2016. We continue to work throughout 2018 in the midterms. We saw 2018 elections as probably some of the securest elections that we have held to date, and we continue to build on that work as we go into 2020. So very proud of the work that CISA has been doing on election security. And so we know in this election cycle, the IC has said that they have not attributed any cyber campaign against any election infrastructure from a nation-state adversary. And I think that speaks to the type of work that we have done over the past 3.5 to 4 years, because at this time, going all the way back to 2016, there were indicators and warnings that they were targeting our election infrastructure. We don't see that today as I sit here today, and I think that's because all of the work that not only CISA has done, but the entire interagency has done, as well as the work the administration has done, is calling out individuals that we have identified that are trying to.
Secretary Wolf, can you address briefly the recent report that came out, I think it was from Microsoft, about various countries trying to interfere in the election? They mentioned, as I recall, Russia, China, Iran. Right. Can you address that?
Absolutely. So when we talk about nation-state threats to our election systems, we talk about three specifically. We talk about Russia, we talk about China, and we talk about Iran. And they all come about this differently, but all three are a threat. So I have been very consistent about that. The intelligence assessment put out by the DNI in early August was very consistent about that. And again, the Microsoft report, Senator, that you mentioned also talks about all three of those nation states being a threat. So I know that there continues to be a lot of focus on Russia, as there should be, but you cannot do that at the exclusion of making sure that we continue to address the threats that are from both China and Iran. Again,
So what the Microsoft report says is not inconsistent with what you're saying in terms of infrastructure not being under attack?
that's correct. So they're not focused, or we don't have any specific intelligence that they are focusing on election infrastructure. That's not to say they can't or they won't. But as I sit here today, they're not focused on election infrastructure. They are those influence campaigns that we see them.
Let me change subjects if I could, and I'm going to ask you about something we did not talk about in our private conversation, and that has to do with your disaster relief fund. Since the $600 federal supplement on unemployment insurance ended, many people have not been able to have access, therefore, to unemployment insurance who lost a job through no fault of their own. The president and his administration stepped in, you stepped in and provided help at $300 federal supplement on top of the state supplement per month. That has been a 6-week program. It actually just ended last week. But you took the funding out of the disaster relief fund to be able to do that. I personally believe that that $300 extension is a good idea. I think it should be done till the end of the year. I think that's about the right amount. There is no magic number, but that's not disruptive to the labor market as the $600 was. However, my understanding is that the disaster relief fund has now reached its cap. In other words, you set a number that was based on some analysis that left enough money in the disaster relief fund to respond to true natural disasters. So two things have happened. One is we've had a lot more natural disasters, even in the last couple of months. Certainly the hurricanes and the wildfires are at the top of that list. So more demand for the assets in the fund. And second is, we've, as I understand it, depleted the entire amount that was set aside for the unemployment insurance. I have a legislative proposal, in fact, can offer it as an amendment to the CR, and we'll see what happens, but to try to replenish that fund. Unfortunately, it's not fully replenished in the CR. Can you talk about that for a moment? Again, it's not something I've raised before with you, and I don't expect you to have all the details. But my understanding is the fund has $24.7 billion left in it, and that's not enough to handle the natural disaster challenges we face, plus being able to try to extend this $300 federal supplement program. Can you talk about that?
Yes, Senator. So as of today, FEMA has obligated around $49.5 billion in DRF funding to support COVID-19 relief efforts, and that includes about $39.6 billion in support of lost wages, Senator, which you certainly articulated. Obviously, the DRF is also used to respond to disasters. So Hurricanes Laura and Marco, about $581 million. Hurricane Sally's $2.4 million thus far, and we'll see, again, how that continues to roll out. Our balance in the DRF is a little north of $25 billion, so there is still funding inside our disaster relief fund to continue to address, as you know, hurricane season goes all the way through November, as well as to address the wildfires out in the West. So we do have funding as of today in the DRF to continue to support that FEMA has to continue to support efforts around the country.
Right, my time has expired. Just one quick answer. Do we have enough or not?
We do have enough as we sit here today. Now, if we have additional hurricanes, depending on the size and category of those hurricanes, as well as the wildfires, we may have to have continued discussions with Congress and OMB about additional funding for the DRF.
Thank you, Chairman.